I was even just thinking about it today, how many parallels there are between young people in the 60s and 70s, and I feel like young people today, a lot of, change and uncertainty, but a lot of, inspiration and leadership.
And we're sort of in a similar spot. It's interesting, we're beginning to talk about America 250.
Okay.
The semi-quincentennial.
Yes.
Which doesn't roll off the tongue quite like bicentennial. But that sense of, where America is taking a moment to look at the founding period, to take stock on where we are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that celebration, which I remember as a little girl, was happening at a time of sort of great uncertainty, similar sort of economic challenges that we have right now. And so I think there's in some ways a real kinship for those of us who were kids in the 70s and those of us who are young people today.
I'm your host, Vicky Diaz Camacho. This space brings together voices across generations to engage in honest conversations about democracy, identity, and the future we are building together. Let's dive in.
Samantha, I'm 19 currently. I'm an undergrad student at Lehigh University, currently studying an integrated degree in engineering and arts and sciences.
Nice.
So chemical engineering, policy, and health medicine and society, kind of the intersection of innovation and policy to address global health inequities in different ways. Was a club at first and grew from there, called Feeding Philly, that we worked to address food waste and food insecurity. So that kind of sparked my interest both for sustainability work and for social justice work.
Definitely want to talk about sort of the civic engagement of STEM and engineering.
Most
and how you bring
definitely.
that mindset especially into design. I think it's sort of under-realized how important that is. So Stefanie Sanford, I'm here. I chair the board of Citizens and Scholars, and I'm a fifth-generation Texan, so it's always great to meet a fellow Texan. And I spent the first decade of my career working for Republicans and Democrats in federal, state, and local government, including a stint as a White House fellow. I then spent 11 years at the Gates Foundation, where I ran our U.S. program policy and advocacy group, and then spent 10 years as running the Washington office and external relations for the College Board here in D.C. And I have always been interested in civic stuff from the time I was a little girl. I had a fantastic sort of fourth grade teacher who got me super interested in petitions and things like that.
Yeah.
And when I did my PhD thesis became a book called Civic Life in the Information Age. Technology,
Fabulous.
Politics, and Generation X, back when Generation X was Gen Z, when we were the young ones.
Part of what you do is rooted in something personal, maybe, or someone or something who inspired you. I'd love to know, what was that aha moment for you?
I can start. I've done is very personal. Goes right up to my mom. I remember I probably attended different marches and protests with her. As I was learning to read, to write signs. I remember going to women's rights marches, and that kind of flourished into kind of finding my own voice and own kind of where I can fit in activism. Kind of on a more personal level. Kind of my experience with an eating disorder really had me understand kind of the detrimental effects of malnutrition, and really made me very passionate in trying to address systemic barriers to food security and nutrition, especially for young people, since I can really understand and empathize with those very detrimental effects.
Mine's quirkier. I went to, I was a kid in the 70s. For ours, I mean, the influential people in my family were women, my mother, my aunties, my grandmothers. And I remember talking about the ERA. And so I remember sitting at the table and saying, so what's the ERA? And my mom said, it means that unlike us, as a little girl, you can grow up and you can be anything you want to be.
Wow.
And so I said, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I need to go think about this. And so I went to my room and I went up and I was like, okay, it's the ERA. I can be whatever I want to be. So I thought about it and I went back and I sat down with my mom and my grandmother and I said, I've decided what I want to be. And they said,
And that was it.
And I said, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Are you serious?
And they're like, they said, well, you can't be that. And I said, so, well, what's the ERA if I can't be quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys? And so it's interesting to hear about you, to talk about activism, because my mom then, after having to sort of disappoint me about what sort of the kind of what the ERA would promise. So one, it's a sense of that progress in public policy can make a whole lot of progress. And but the opportunities that were for my grandmother, my mother, and for me were, I mean, the arc of progress has been quite quite clear.
Yeah.
But they also then channeled me into learning about petitions, learning about petitions at school, and I went on to work at the Capitol and to work at the Capitol, to work in the White House, to go to the Kennedy School, to do all of these things. And every single time you could just see them saying, okay, you couldn't be quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, but you can be all these other things.
What are things that you think are often missing from this conversation, and what takeaways would you want our viewers to walk away with?
What do you think?
Really trying. I feel like we just started talking.
Right? I
Like,
know.
wow.
Time flies.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like something I'm definitely gaining from this conversation is how many similarities there are, across generations and, sectors or fields of profession, that there's always more common ground than you think, whether it be where you're from, where you're living now, what you can gain from civic engagement. And I feel like I'm already learning so much from these 10 minutes. I'd say just to encourage anyone listening to, exercise their agency. And that does take knowledge and skills. You want to be informed. You want to know how you can best address an issue and not, step on anyone's toes or, fail horribly. But I know, especially as young people, that while that may seem more intimidating, it really will probably result in more support than you could imagine, and be more fulfilling than you would think, could ever anticipate. So I would just very much encourage, especially young people, but really people of any age or generation, to exercise agency in an issue that they feel especially connected to, whether it be personal or something they learned from their fourth grade teacher. That's what I'd say.
So totally agree with all of that. I think one of the things that you asked, sort of what's missing or what we want to keep, is because we're in a time of such great polarization, that there's a lot of focus on difference, and that we need to engage across difference.
Yeah.
And you alluded to it in a couple of different ways. That's anxiety. And I think that rather than focusing on difference, to do exactly what this very natural thing was we did before the camera started rolling. We found out that we had, that we are S&S and Philly and Texas. There is something, particularly the more different you think you are, that rather than figuring out, all the ways that you're different, to find the thing that you have in common with someone. Because we were like, oh, is this going to be okay? Is this going to be? And we're like, oh my gosh, Philly, SNS and Philly and Texas, and there's a little dopamine hit that happens when you find something in common, and I think we blow past that. And to say that if you come into each encounter, even one where you're expected to, you're set up to say, oh, we're going to be in a different generation, or we're going to be a different political party, we're going to be from different towns, different parts of the country, that the first thing you do is to find that thing you have in common, because you have it. And it made us all smile.
It did.
I agree.
Here, didn't it?
Love it. Love it. This has been wonderful. Thank you both so much for your time and your energy.